Hello and welcome to the Valley Sports Telegram Weekly Roundup. We have an exciting slate of quarterfinal action that, if we're being honest, was a little bit of a bummer for those of us cheering for Valley teams. But we're not jumping into it just yet. As always, as you know, I'm joined by Kenny Hodges. Kaylee Harden has the week off. She will be back when we do our finals recap and our season review. But before I jump into it, Kenny, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Met the greatest week. It hasn't been the greatest playoffs for our teams in the Valley, but we still got some teams going strong. We got some teams with some really intriguing matchups. We're promised an all-Valley matchup this week, which guarantees us at least a Valley team in one of the top divisions in the championship game, and we have our championship contender in the championship for 8-man. So we got plenty to talk about. Let's dive right into it.
That we do, and here we go. So we'll start an open. Number 1 Birmingham took care of number 8 Narbonne. Narbonne was the offensive team coming in. They flashed it all season. But that Birmingham defense, led by the Tonga twins, shut them down pretty much. And that was a 57-19 final. The other one was number 5 Granada and number 4 Carson. Carson had a good handle. They were able to put the wraps on Granada Hills. That was a 34-12 final there. Over in D1, Banning came out on top over Cleveland 28-14. That was one where you kind of are hoping for a little more out of that. But, I mean, Banning, like we said, was a team that could have been open if chips had fallen just a little differently. Over in D2, we had Arleta in the early game. They fell to Fairfax. It was a 35-17 final there. Chatsworth took care of business doing what they do. It was a 42-7 final for them. They're off into the semis. And their opponent came in the next matchup. It was San Fernando and Roosevelt, and this was back and forth. This was exciting. If you haven't yet, go and read the recap on valleysportstelegram.com. Hell of a job by Richard Espinoza. But that game was a 28-26 final. San Fernando on top, giving us an all-Valley semifinal in D2. Over in D3, we had hopes of an all-Valley semifinal down at the bottom of the bracket. But after a quick start, Chavez was unable to kind of overcome what Southeast was doing. It was a 23-6 final. I'll have a little more on that in a little bit. And over in the other one, Verdugo Hills traveled to Jordan, and they were unable to repeat what they did early in the season. Jordan took this one 38-3 very convincingly. And in the 8-man semifinals, Fulton took care of business, did what they've done. It was a 52-8 final over USC Hybrid. And those are what we had in the city. I'm going to throw it over to Kenny for his news and notes. What you got?
Well, coming into this week, we had some hopes for a handful of Valley teams, and maybe they could continue to advance into the postseason. Starting, obviously, we'll start at the top with the Open. Birmingham did exactly what we thought they would do. But let me pause there. I want to pause there for a second. I understand that there are people who may believe that our job is to wave the pom-poms every week for certain teams, and it is our job at the Valley Sports Telegram to tell the story or to paint things a certain way. But I'm not doing my job if I'm not telling you that when we get to this point in the season, All of these teams are worthy of being here. Yes, we understand and recognize that Birmingham is the king of the city section. Go back and read the power list that I write every week. Go back and read stories and how we've talked about this team all year. It's never meant as a disrespect to say that they're going to have to deal with competition because A, if you're a competitor, you want competition. And B, if these teams are not approaching a battle with Birmingham thinking that they have what it takes to knock off the king, then what's the purpose of being here? You shouldn't get on the bus, and you shouldn't. You've lost the battle before it's even begun. So when someone like myself is talking about landmines or talking about potential pitfalls, we're talking about what we see, what we feel. It is never meant as a disrespect to a team like Birmingham. It is meant to say, hey, y'all are going to have to bring your A game every week because these teams now, you are 5 years into a dominant dynastic run that every team that you play, it is their Super Bowl. It is their championship. It is their be all end all to try to be the ones to knock you off of that pedestal. And it is my job to convey what my research. I spend hours. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I'm telling you. I don't just research and study our valley teams. I research and study the entirety of the city section and the southern section around us because we need to know and the public needs to be informed of everything that could potentially happen. That is all that is. That is all that's ever going to be. We recognize who Birmingham is, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not kissing anybody's ass. If you don't bring your A game, y'all going to get beat one of these weeks. Don't care. I have a deep respect for what this program brings on a week-to-week basis. The Tonga twins are awesome. I have an 11-year-old who plays the same position as the Tonga twins. I show him their clips and highlights and say, hey, you don't need to look at Aaron Donald. Look at these kids on a high school level and you emulate what they do. That's how much reverence I have for these kids and some of these kids in these programs. I've sang the praises of a Kingston Tisdale all season long. We've been talking about a kid like Drayden Fowles for 2 years. We recognize and understand who Birmingham is, and we've never sugarcoated the fact that they are who they are. But I'm also going to be honest and tell you, if you come with C+ effort over the course of the next 2 weeks, one of these teams, namely the team we'll get into in a couple of minutes, or when we look ahead, will come in here and paste your ass. I'm just letting you know. But I digress. Carson, great effort against Granada Hills. A tremendous season for Granada Hills. They should hang their hats on the fact that there was a plan in place for this program. It's still an active plan in place for this program that they wanted to ascend to being an open team. And guess what? They went on the road against a very, very, very tough Carson team, who, in my opinion, was undefeated. They probably shouldn't have been playing them in the first round because I think Carson should have been the 2 seed in this division. And they hung tough on the road against a very, very, very tough Carson team. They had some flash plays. Darrell had a 90-yard touchdown, but this is the end of the road. So congratulations to some of those seniors, Oliver Taylor, Chance Hexamer, some of these boys who have kind of helped put this program on the map. I wish them nothing but the best in the future. The future is bright for a lot of these young men, but that's not the end of the road for Granada Hills. When you got a kid like Darrell coming back, when his little brother's going to be even better next year, I have a feeling Granada will be right back here in this spot. Moving on to D1. Again, Corey Hall, great career. It ends here in the quarterfinals in D1. Bannon was just a tough team. Bannon was really there were 9 teams who were fighting for those 8 spots in open, and whoever ended up as the top team in D1, it was going to be hard for anybody to beat that team. Bannon ended up being that team, and they put a complete effort together against Cleveland at home. Great career for Corey Hall. We know he's going to the next level. We know he's going to do great things. We know Donovan Powell and a lot of those boys in that program, they put a lot of work and effort in building Cleveland up. Hopefully they can continue to do so into the future with their new coach. Moving on to Division II. Again, our leader, the road ends here. They just ran into a hot Fairfax team. Something we talked about going into this week was it was going to be a game of tempo. If Fairfax could go in and impose their tempo and make Arleta have to play their game, it would work against Arleta, and we kind of saw that here. They weren't able to score the kind of points to be able to keep up with what Fairfax can do offensively. Sometimes it's just a bad matchup, and because styles make fights. But again, great season for Arleta. 10 wins this year, getting back to where they were 2 years ago, and there's still plenty of young talent on this team. They'll be back next year. We'll get into San Fernando and Roosevelt. Great win for San Fernando, advancing to the semifinals. It literally came down to the last minutes in this ball game. But San Fernando did what they've done all year long, and they continue to, and they just survive and advance. Chatsworth, Isaiah Ramo put on the show as usual, as we know him to do. He's going to ride. He's going to ride until the wheels fall off before he moves on to the next level. And who knows, the way that offense and that defense is beginning to look, it might be all the way to a city championship and on the states. Who knows? And D3, I warned everybody, this Jordan team was not the same Jordan team that Verdugo faced earlier in the year. They've gotten better and better and better, and they showed you that effort. They showed you how far they've come in that comprehensive 5-touchdown victory over Verdugo Hills. Chavez, we knew it was a season. It was up and down. But that program still headed in the right direction. Southeast just provided challenges that they just couldn't solve in a one-and-done scenario. But congratulations to Chavez on a good season, and hopefully they continue to build on what they've done over the course of the last couple of years as they just continue to ascend and continue to work their way to becoming viable contenders on a year-end basis in the East Valley. And in terms of 8-man, we knew what we were going to get from Fulton against USC. They had done it already to them this year. They did it again. What's surprising is what happened on the other side of the bracket, with Animo Robinson going to New Designs and handing them their first loss of the year. So maybe Animo is ready. Maybe Animo Robinson is ready to give them a fight. We'll see. Those two teams will lock horns in the championship. And in terms of the Southern section, great comeback win for Chaminade. They move on. They'll have a tough test this week in the next round of the postseason. And the same can be said for Sierra Canyon. Listen, and that if you're in D1, expect a fight every week in that bracket. They had a fight on their hands with Santa Margarita and their gargantuan quarterback. That kid seemed like he was 7 feet tall out there for the Eagles. But Sierra Canyon found a way to get it done. Now they move on to a really tough test, their toughest test of the season so far, when they go on the road and have to deal with Mater Dei in the semifinals. So good luck to them. Good luck to all our teams here in the Valley that are still left standing. Those are my news and notes coming out of this weekend in the postseason.
All right. That was a little bit of fire there, bringing,
Yeah, like I said, I just needed to get that out because there have been some things that have come back that have been sort of put in the ether, and it was equal parts wanting to show respect to that program, but also equal parts that we are journalists and our job is to deliver the facts first, and not to me as a slight or to be hating on the program, but to let you know that there are some challenges out there, because you can't be this far into what they've been doing and don't think that programs aren't being built to try to take you down. So all we're doing is telling you, if anything, heed our advice. Heed my words. I'm telling you, because if I'm playing at Gardena, if I'm playing at Carson, all I've been doing the last 2 years is thinking about coming and busting your ass. So it shouldn't be a shock, and it shouldn't be taken as a slight. You should understand that the challenge that lies ahead of you and meet it head on. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah. and like I said, that was hot. It was definitely a hot take. So, but we're gonna keep moving. We got to keep rolling. The game I was at, as we had tried to get people over. I was at Chavez when they hosted Southeast. This one was going to be an interesting contest of two fairly similar teams, where if you kind of get behind the 8 ball, how are you gonna rack it up? And it was interesting because that Chavez defense was on top from the beginning. First play of the game, they forced a fumble. Now, they didn't recover, but they forced a fumble. They had a penalty. Boom. Okay. The second play of the game, interception. So their defense was right out there from the beginning. Unfortunately, they got the ball deep into Southeast territory. They're actually around the 15, if not deeper. And they fumbled the ball away. So very early, all these jitters, kind of big game. But that drive, that second offensive drive for Southeast, they had some penalties. The Chavez defense was kind of holding. And ultimately, Southeast lost the football inside their 5. I think it was like the 2-yard line. They fumbled and lost. So Chavez gets it and rushes it in. It was a quarterback keeper. For their score, 2-point was stopped. So they were up 6-0 halfway through the first quarter. All right, cool. Now the issue there is both teams were just kind of trading stops throughout the rest of the half. Going to halftime, 0-0. Okay. Chavez kicked off to start the second half, and it seemed whatever was said at halftime in that Southeast locker room or in the huddle at the end, it worked. It worked. They drove the field on their first possession and scored. Kicked the field goal, so now they're up 7-6. The issue coming out of there is what is going to happen next. Unfortunately, Chavez wasn't able to do much more. Got stopped a few times and just kind of struggled. Southeast scored about 5 minutes later, and this was the first touchdown for Senan Carson. He was kind of the guy who was really pushing it through when Southeast got rolling, and roll they were. So he scored there, and telling you, the thing you've talked about, Kenny, and we've kind of talked about is this Chavez team isn't necessarily built to chase the game. So when it's 15-6 at this point, because they went for 2-point was good. Now they're up 9. They've made it a 2-score game. So Chavez immediately, these kids know they got to score twice, and the pressure was on. They ended the game with 3 turnovers. Right, they had the first fumble lost. They lost another fumble later, and they threw an interception. It's hard, but I'll tell you, they kept fighting. The kind of backbreaker for them came right at the start of the fourth, and Carson took it again. He had a 54. He broke a big one, 54 yards. He got in. It was 22-6. They line up for the extra point, and they fake it. Successful 2-point pass. 23-6. Now they're up 19. You and I were talking before, kind of like, at first I was like, well, you're up. Why would you necessarily go for 2? But we looked at it and it was like, well, if they kick the field goal, it's a 16-point game. That's 2 scores. They get a successful 2-point conversion. Now it's 3 scores. So that makes sense. Forcing a team to try to score 3 times in a quarter. And they didn't. They held. And ultimately, there were some moments where I was scratching my head with Southeast. Why do you go for a fake punt inside of 5 minutes when you're up 3 scores? Just kick the ball away. What are you doing? And one of their kids got hurt on the play. Thankfully, he wasn't seriously hurt. He was able to get up. But the moment he went down, it's like, had you kicked the ball away, your player would not have been injured. Your job as a coach is not just to win games, right? You also got to make sure your kids in a position like this are not in a position where they might get hurt. I'm going to leave it at that because I would have some choice words. But yeah, ultimately, Chavez was not able to build on that second drive where they scored. There were some good things. There were some movements. There were some moments. But Southeast helped. They bend, didn't break. And they came out on top. And they'll be in the semis.
Yeah, it's tough. It's sort of, this game sort of represented what we've sort of talked about all year with Chavez, and just sort of up and down, great moments that make you believe, and then moments where you realize there's a lot more work to go, a lot more refinement that's sort of needed, because this team is still rather young in certain areas. A lot of that was by design. And when it's by design, that means that there's going to have to be some construction that goes on with that design. So the hope is that they take lessons from this season, because there were some really, really brilliant moments. And then there were some moments that sort of like, you can take losses or you can take lessons and sort of kind of come back next year and sort of build from it, and build on the success that you've begin to kind of put those building blocks in place. Like I said, I remember having conversations with Nunes last year about what the vision for this program was, how they sort of are working from a deficit. So everything has to sort of be blue collar, and the small group that they have just kind of have to band together and work to get better every week, every day, every rep. And you see it at moments and you see it at times, but it's not quite there yet. But there's a lot of potential. They've had kids that sort of flashed all year long, and hopefully they take the lessons from this year and they come back really ready to sort of attack, because again, when you look at the East Valley, it'll be wide open. The league is going to skew young with a lot of the kids who have graduated from last year and then the seniors who are leaving this year. So there's room at the top if they can continue to sort of build on what they've got. So, hopefully this is not the last that we see of Chavez in terms of being a contender. I think that there's still a lot there, and hopefully they take what happened this year and they kind of build on it.
Yeah. Like you said, there's a lot of youth and there's enough for them to learn from. Because the lessons that we've seen last year and this year is, if you take your lumps and you keep receipts, people are going to pay. We saw it with Monroe last year. We saw it with San Fernando this year. And, to those boys, I found out that they found us finally, and they're watching. So to those boys, keep receipts, keep them, because you've been taking your lumps, and no one's going to want to see you when you're out for payback. So,
and hopefully they go back and they listen to a lot of the stuff that people like me have said about them the last couple of years, and understand that they're believers outside of your locker room. They are believers, and you got to take that belief and take it into the off season and continue to kind of build and stick together and continue to work towards these goals because they are achievable. They are attainable. You saw yourselves do it at times this year. So hopefully that's the mantra, that's the mindset going into this offseason, and they come back ready to stand on business next year. So
yeah, exactly. Take what you can, learn from it, flush the rest, and put in the work. We do know they put in the work though. So, but Kenny, I mentioned San Fernando. You wanted to go in depth on that one because that was quite the back and forth, and it was an exciting finish.
Yeah, it was an exciting game, and it was one of those when you kind of look at how the bracket broke down, you knew that one of the things we were hoping for was that if the teams in the bottom could handle business, we would sort of be guaranteed a Valley team in the championship because we thought that there was a real good chance we could end up with an all Valley semifinal on the bottom side of D2. When you saw Chatsworth as the 2 seed and you saw San Fernando as the 3 seed, but there's still work that has to go into getting there. And we knew that San Fernando would probably have a stiff test, whether it be Roosevelt or Wilson in the second round. I thought it would be Wilson, but Roosevelt proved me wrong, went and handled business against Wilson and got to this point. So you knew they were going to be game coming into this contest, and boy, were they. This was outside of a couple of games on the city section side. This is right up there for game of the week. And we'll jump right into it. Roosevelt got the ball first, and you could kind of you could see that the offensive philosophy for Roosevelt is sort of similar to teams, well, quite frankly, what San Fernando is going to see next week with Chatsworth and teams like Granada, a very run-heavy, very physical style of play. Try to wear your opponent down, try to beat them up until you kind of gash them for big plays in the run game, sort of double wing, and a double wing offense, and they got right to it. They moved the ball well for a while on their first drive until San Fernando's front seven did what we've seen them do all year, which is get penetration into the backfield and kind of shut down what the other team wants to do, especially in the run game. When San Fernando got the ball, their first time out, their O-line were opening holes, which were kind of allowing the Tigers to kind of chew up yards and move the ball pretty easily in the Roosevelt territory. They had a big third down pass completion. Anguiano hit a big pass to kind of move the chains. They got all the way down inside Roosevelt's 5, but Roosevelt kind of set the tone then that this was going to be a long night, and you were going to need to bring your lunch pails because while it looked like San Fernando was about to go in and put the first points on the board, running back gets stood up at the goal line. Second guy comes in, strips. They take the ball. Roosevelt gets the ball and prevents San Fernando from scoring. The very next play, Manny Madrigal, Roosevelt's running back, he takes the ball from the 5, basically gets them out of the shadow of the end zone up to midfield. And you just kind of felt, you could feel amongst the people in the stands that it was like, oh, we could be in for one. We have to buckle up. So by the end of the first quarter, there was no score. Both defenses were kind of stiffening up. They would allow some yards, but then they hold. San Fernando's defense would force Roosevelt to punt. It was almost a disaster for San Fernando as Roosevelt stripped the ball on the punt return, but they recovered and kept the ball. Roosevelt kind of held again. And then Alan Ortiz hits a 30-yard rush for a touchdown after Roosevelt had kind of plowed their way into San Fernando territory to take a 6-0 lead at about the halfway part of the second quarter. On the next possession, when San Fernando got the ball back, after a face mask penalty, Melvin Pineda, who became a theme in this game, and also a real glimpse into the future of what this San Fernando program is going to be built on the next couple of years. When we talk about the likes of Diego Montes at Kennedy, when we talk about some of the good young players in the Valley Mission, his name is going to be mentioned amongst those guys over the course of the next couple of years. He is a star waiting to happen, and he had a star performance this evening. He basically gets them down inside the 20-yard line. Then Anguiano hits a beautiful pass over the top, drops the ball right in the bucket, gets San Fernando on the board. They come right back, tie the game up at 6-6 at the 4-minute mark of the second quarter. But Roosevelt, showing you that they were game, came right back, hit a big play touchdown to take the lead 12-6 with a minute to go in the second quarter. San Fernando tried to push the ball down the field. Roosevelt picked it off. So they went into halftime with a 12-6 lead, and leaving San Fernando to kind of have some work to do in the second half. San Fernando got the ball to start the second half. They nearly hit a big pass play, but they end up going 3 and out, giving the ball back to Roosevelt. There was a big defensive play that had Roosevelt starting deep in San Fernando territory. It was a botch snap on the punt, and they kind of gang tackled the punter, got the ball deep, and punched it in from short distance to extend the lead 18-6. And you could kind of feel the body language on the San Fernando sideline was starting to get a little tense. Now all of a sudden you look up, you're down 2 touchdowns, you're in the middle of the third quarter, you're looking around, you're trying to figure out what's going on. And this is usually the time where if you've got a big player, if you got a star, this is where you need them to sort of kind of step up. You could hear people in the stands screaming, somebody's got to step up. And Melvin Pineda did just that. Answered quickly. Melvin Pineda, 50-yard touchdown to cut the deficit to 18-13. And you almost kind of feel when he hit that run, where he broke a couple tackles, got up the sideline, and took it to the house, you could feel the momentum sort of switch. You could feel the team sort of take a breath, and the defense was sort of re-energized. They went right in there, 3 and out real quick, bam, get the ball back. Another quick drive. This time it was a QB keeper on the option. Anguiano goes in. He went from 26 yards out. They pull out a gadget play for the 2-point conversion. They put the backup. They split Anguiano out. They put the backup quarterback in. They ran like a slant, one of those freaky plays where the entire O-line is lined up on the far hash, and there's just a receiver out on the right. Play works. They get the 2-point conversion, and all of a sudden it feels like in a blink they went from down 18-6 to up 21-18, seemingly in a flash. Roosevelt's next possession, they moved into San Fernando territory with the help of a face mask penalty, but then penalties in their own sort of kind of pushed them backwards. Pass interference call sort of extended the drive for Roosevelt as they moved the ball inside San Fernando's 30, but then that San Fernando defense does what they have done all year long. That defense makes timely plays, gets timely takeaways right when it's a gut punch to their opponent. They right after Roosevelt gets inside their 30, looks like they're threatening to go in and score. Here comes the defense kind of holding the guy up, stripping it out, taking the ball away, and gets the ball back for San Fernando. Roosevelt's defense kind of holds from there. They force a punt. Good punt from San Fernando, backs them up inside their 10 to kind of start the next drive. But Roosevelt, again, a heavyweight fight. These teams started kind of felt like they were feeling each other out, and then sort of kind of figured out how to. Maybe it was because both teams were sort of wearing down because of how physical the game was. But now all of a sudden, some things were starting to happen where runs were starting to both teams were able to kind of pop big plays. Roosevelt hits a big 40-yard run to get out of the shadow of the end zone when they were backed up. Had a strong drive, drove it down into San Fernando territory, ended up with a 20-yard touchdown run to retake the lead, up 26-21 with 5 minutes and change on the clock. And San Fernando did exactly what they needed to do. Put together a really good drive, started on their 40. They ran the ball right down Roosevelt's throat, capped it off with a 25-yard end-around touchdown. They waited to the perfect moment to pull out a reverse that they hadn't run all game. They ran it out of a look that they had been giving Roosevelt all game long, which sort of forced Roosevelt to sort of kind of flow downhill towards one direction. Boom. They hand it off, an end around back the other way, wide open. Nobody's on the backside. They waltz into the end zone, 25 yards. Edward Lopez takes the lead for San Fernando. They go up 28-26 with a minute 51 left to go in the game. Roosevelt gets the ball back, but of course, because Roosevelt is proven that they're not going to go away, they hit a couple of passes. They move the ball inside the 30. Obviously, what became evident early with some of the Roosevelt drives where they were kind of going for it on third and fourth down situations in a way that suggested that they don't have anybody who could kick for them. You sort of kind of knew that this was going to be an all or nothing. They were going to have to try to put the ball in the end zone because they didn't feel comfortable trying to kick a field goal. What was scary is if they had a kid who could kick, they actually got the ball pretty deep into San Fernando territory. They got the ball up to around the 20-yard line. And there are teams in the Valley, namely teams like Kennedy and Chatsworth, who actually have kids who can kick comfortably from 30 to 40 out. That might have been a death knell for San Fernando, but they were saved by the fact that Roosevelt didn't really have a kid who could kick. So they had to kind of go for the gusto, try to throw the ball into the end zone, 3-4 cracks, trying to throw the ball down the field into the end zone to no avail. San Fernando holds, and they move on to the semifinals. It was a great win. They had to show some guts and some resolve because, like I said, they were down 2 touchdowns in that second half. Roosevelt didn't make it easy for them at all to get this win. So we'll see what this means in terms of what San Fernando does next week. If they had issues with the run game this week, it ain't going to get any easier next week when you see Isaiah Ramon and that big Chatsworth O-line that they're going to have to deal with. But regardless, a good win for them. It's all about surviving and advancing this time of year. And then you go in next week and try to figure out a game plan to kind of get past a really, really tough Chatsworth team and advance to the championship.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, on that note, you kind of set it up, so I'll knock it down. We're heading into the semifinals, and we touched on it in the open, and I'll touch on it again. It's a little disappointing as people who are really rooting for the Valley. Last year was great. This year, not so much. We only have 4 teams officially left representing the Valley. Over in open, Birmingham will be hosting Carson. That's going to be a heck of a game. I expect it to be a dogfight throughout. D1, we don't have any reps. D2, like we just said. Sorry, San Fernando is going to Chatsworth. And they're going to have to bring their A game. You got to play a clean game against that Chatsworth team if you have hopes of containing that run and what they do. And they've been using different people. As much as Ramo is the main guy you want to shut down, there's other explosive runners on that team. And the final team we have representing the Valley is Fulton in the 8-man final. I got a couple quick notes on this before I give it to Kenny for his. So Fulton did beat Animal Robinson earlier in the year. This was, though, at the beginning of the year in September. It was a 50-8 final. And here's the interesting thing. Animal put up more points on Fulton than anybody else did all season. That 28 spot is more than anybody. So expect both of these teams who are now better and rolling I think this is going to be a nice little dogfight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you're talking about a team and Anima Robinson that, I mean, put up 94 points in these first two rounds in the eight-man playoff. So they're coming in with a lot of confidence. They're coming in riding high. They're going to come in thinking that they can play with Fulton because they absolutely played with Fulton when they saw them during the regular season. So Fulton's going to have to bring their A game because this team is confident and feels that they can kind of come in and take care of business. So, but doubling back to the other matchups that we have left, and talking about the Birmingham Carson and even San Fernando and Chatsworth, I think there's sort of a common theme with both of those games, and it's going to be in the trenches. As cliche as it sounds, if Birmingham is going to beat a 10-win Carson team, yeah, it's going to start up front with the Tonga twins. It's going to start with can they get penetration against a very, very well disciplined, very tough minded Carson team who we know there's no disguising what they're going to want to do or disguising what they have to do to win. This team is not built to kind of throw the ball around on you. Yeah, they have some balance. They can throw the ball. And hopefully their starting quarterback will be healthy enough that maybe they'll feel confident in playing him this week to kind of maybe throw Birmingham off a little bit and make them feel like they can't just load the box. But it's all going to be about how Birmingham controls Jerry Masalafua for Carson, because Carson's key to winning this game is to try to keep that high-powered Birmingham offense off the field. And in order for them to do that, they're going to have to grind the game. They're going to have to get first downs. They're going to have to put together 5, 6, 7-minute drives to keep Kingston Tisdale on the sideline. That's easier said than done because one of Birmingham's strengths are they get your ass off the field in a hurry. To make sure that their offense is the ones that their offense is kind of controlling the outcome, but it's going to be tougher than it has been in the recent weeks for Birmingham because this Carson team is built to give them a hard time. Quite frankly, whether Birmingham wants to hear that from me or not, it is the truth. That doesn't mean that Carson is going to beat them. It just means that they are built to give you to make life difficult for what Birmingham wants to do game plan wise on a weekly basis. And the same thing in that Chatsworth game against San Fernando. San Fernando is going to have to find a way to contain Isaiah Romo. Yeah, that's easier said than done, but gap integrity is paramount. Lincoln in the first half tried, and they had some success with trying to keep him from bouncing outside. Because the thing about Isaiah Romo is if he gets to the edges of your defense, it's a death nail because he can run over you, but he can also run past you. So you want to force him inside. That's the best chance you have of tackling that kid. And if San Fernando can make this a gritty, grimy game where Romo has to work and grind for every yard, and that those linebackers can kind of get downhill and kind of flow to the ball, and everybody can rally to the ball because you have to, because he's not going down on first contact. It's going to take 2 or 3 guys at a time to get him to the ground. If they can do that, they can kind of muck up the game in the ways that we kind of saw Elko be able to do. Not going to use Birmingham as an example because Birmingham just kind of tears up everybody. But Elko is a great example of a team that just kind of made life difficult. You can't completely stop this guy, but you might be able to kind of get him off the field a couple of times. And on offense, they got to play a clean game. They're going to lean on Melvin Pineda. He's got to have a big game for them on the road at Chatsworth if they're going to get to a championship. They're going to need their quarterback, Anguiano, to have probably throw the ball more than 8 times like he did in the Roosevelt game. They're going to need to have some balance to keep Chatsworth from coming downhill and loading the box to keep the Pinedas of the world from being able to kind of impact the game. So And more importantly, no turnovers. Forcing turnovers, you have to. Their only chance to beat Chatsworth on the road is they have to win the turnover battle. They've got to force a couple, and they've got to not turn the ball over themselves. If they can do that, they've got a shot of pulling this upset.
And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So we say this every week, but when you get to this point in the season, it's exciting time. So get out there, pack those stands, cheer on those kids. Let them know you're there. Be loud, be proud, and keep sharing the love, spread the love. Because, like we say all the time, that's why we do what we do. We want to come from a place of love, and we want you guys to bring it.
Yeah, leave a like, subscribe if you like what you're hearing. Leave a comment. And like you said, and like the piggyback of what you said, just go out and support these kids. It's late in the season. They've been at this since June, July, through off-season workouts. It's all working and culminating to what they're doing here. I would love to see Chatsworth filled on both sides with Chatsworth support, but also with San Fernando support, because there's a lot of kids who took their lumps last year and they're showing you guys the fruits of their labor. And same thing can be said for Chatsworth. Same thing we said for Birmingham. We know Birmingham's got to bring it, because I know for a fact that the Carson contingent plans on coming in and being loud. And go support 8-man football too. These kids, it's the same level of intensity, just with a few less guys on the field, on a slightly smaller field. Go support Fulton and Nemo too, as they battle it out for the 8-man title. But as usual, we love the support we get from you guys. Go support the kids and support VST Media. Click that notification bell so you know when these things go up. Be on the lookout for basketball and soccer coverage in the winter. We're going to bring those to you too. And thank you guys again. Peace.